heavily.
Well, first of all, yeah, we just ought to drop that whole subject so we don't offer the opportunity. Dave, you're next.
Two items.
Right.
You made a comment relative to the RSAs. I would recommend that we don't vote tonight as much as I would like to until we at least go back to review the RSAs, because I didn't hear anybody here say positively one way or the other relative to the RSAs whether we could do this. So, relative to 2 bites of the apple, I understand that point very clearly. Gus with the town budget, certainly he's integral in putting that together. The school budget.
It's an automatic yes vote for each one.
Correct.
Yeah. So to overcome that vote, or whichever way what you want to look at that, it is 2 bites of the apple. Once in their own board, and secondly here, which makes it difficult to, have disagreement with a particular item within those budgets. Second item that I wanted to comment on, I suppose some people call what's going on a lawsuit. I look at it simply as an aggrieved voter, that we ask for some declarative action from an impartial source, which is a judge, which the law allows. I'm a voter that's disenfranchised, represent other voters that are extremely disenfranchised also. It's not a lawsuit. I'm not going to get any monetary value out of this. I want an impartial judgment on what's going on. And that's mutually exclusive from anything we're looking at with budgets.
We'd just be well off not to
no
talk
conflict
about this. Right. Because if we're getting nowhere talking about it, I don't think it's going to change anything. As far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't be excluded from any votes because of it, and it shouldn't be talked about. Now,
just on the second bite of the apple question, and I understand what you're saying there. Maybe the RSAs speak directly to it.
That's why I'm asking.
I'm not certain. The only thing that comes close, I think, would be the representation from the, no offense, Fred, but the representation from the Gunstock Water District. The argument could be made that the people in that district are having multiple votes, more votes than a normal person because they have a representative just from their area.
I did look the RSA up on that, and it's
and it's clear they can do it.
Yeah, because I was against it to start with.
It's clear they can do it because they elect all of us, but just that little part of town also gets one more vote. So it's a little more than everybody else. That's always kind of bothered me a little bit.
Yeah, it has me too, but
I can't see going against this bid.
Could I ask
Ray had that input first.
I congratulate Phyllis. I have to say, the last meeting I walked out of here, being the newcomer, I was appalled at the behavior. We're all adults. We all have other things to do. And I don't want to sit here and waste my time while people fight over a subject that doesn't even apply to the budget committee.
Right, I agree with that.
So I would encourage you to keep that controlled.
Yeah, get off it. Okay, so that's probably a good idea for us to put off a vote on this until we've got a volunteer to check into the RSAs. I'm not sure that, yes, Scott.
With regard to the statute, the legal authority of a selectman's rep and a school board rep and a village trustee rep to sit on this committee is the same exact statute that enables every other person who's elected to the budget committee to serve on this committee. It's RSA 32. RSA 32 specifically puts a member of the Board of Selectmen on this committee. And there are no restraints on their ability in that capacity, just the same as there's no other constraints on the school board rep or the village trustee rep or any of you here.
If that's the case, then we have there's no reason for this.
There's no way that the rest of the committee could exclude either one of those 2 or 3 people from voting. You can't do it. It's illegal.
Right.
It is pretty clear.
That would be very clear then, so it's a moot point.
So we can vote on that then.
We can vote on it, or all we should just have it withdrawn would be the...
You want to withdraw?
No, let's have a vote.
Okay, all those, after hearing Scott, we all ready to vote right now? All those in favor of the motion that you heard Skip announce, say aye.
Aye.
What's that, 3? Raise your hands. 4, 3. All opposed, raise your hands. Then you have to go with the law. Not even a debate. The last thing we want to do as a budget committee is do something that gets you crossways with the RSAs, in my opinion. Okay, now, is there any plan? I know in last year we had a presentation, the year before we didn't. Is there any plan for any discussion on this, or is it?
Sure, I'd be happy to make a few remarks.
Great.
On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, you have a recommended budget that significantly reduces the size of the government for the town of Gilford. And I say that by telling you that a position has been eliminated at the police department, the deputy police position, and the department is going from 17 officers to 16 officers. A position has been eliminated at the Department of Public Works. Position of operations manager no longer exists, and that department has one fewer full-time employee. In addition, at the fire department, the position of fire inspector, which had, up until this year, had been funded at 32 hours per week, has been eliminated. Those duties will now be absorbed in the deputy fire chief's position. The position of executive secretary at the fire department has been downgraded from a full-time position to a part-time position with no benefits. At the Department of Planning and Land Use, a full-time position there has been reduced to 20 hours a week with no benefits. So there has been a significant reduction in the size of the workforce for the town of Gilford. And I don't want anybody to think for a second that that does not come without consequences. There will be a reduction in services in all of those departments, and the public will find that out as time goes by. But we are going to make the best of that situation. There are two big ticket items in this budget this year, both of which have zero impact on the tax rate. The first is a $450,000 fire truck, which is proposed to be bonded, so the entire expenditure would be offset by an equal amount of revenues. The same is true of a backhoe for the Department of Public Works for $120,000. All of that money is proposed to come from a capital reserve fund. There will be no further appropriations, so that has no impact on the tax rate at all. So it's in the final number. There's that $570,000 in those two items, excuse me, included in the total budget, but it is completely offset by revenue, so it has no impact. Obviously, in future years, if voters do approve a fire truck and it's bonded, there is an impact in paying that bond, which we estimate to be between $51,000 and $52,000 a year over a 10-year period for the fire truck. The backhoe will be bought and paid for from that capital reserve fund. There'll be no additional payments there. So those are sort of the big ticket items, and the board and myself and all the department managers went over this budget with a fine-tooth comb and looked for every single opportunity possible to reduce the numbers and to maintain control over this budget. And we have been very diligent about that, and again, there are some things that we wish we could do that we're not going to do or are not being funded, and that's just in recognition of the economy and the times that we have. So we've done our best effort to give you folks a number that hopefully you won't delve too more deeply into with regards to making further reductions, but know that any reductions you do recommend will have a consequence in terms of service levels. So other than that, you have all the numbers. You have a memorandum from the selectmen that expresses their opinion on the highlights of these cuts. There's an additional budget sheet that I prepared for you that has the blocks, so if you change the numbers, you can sort of track that using that spreadsheet. And we're giving you everything we can think of in terms of how we have this budget under control. So with that in mind, I wish you all the best.
Any questions? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to highlight a couple different notes that Scott hasn't addressed, for this board to keep in mind. I guess first and foremost, I need to thank our town employees as well as our department heads, as well as town administrator Dunn and the other members of the board who all came together. This was an extremely difficult budget to put together because we had made the goal from the Board of Selectmen to the town to come back with a 0% increase. That was our goal, And we knew that that was gonna be difficult because there's a lot of different factors into that, whether it's the retirement costs that were going up, what the state was originally paying for it, now they're not, they passed that onto the town. And obviously the wages question in their benefits and health insurance, as this board is well aware of, how that's impacted this board. So we knew that this was gonna be a difficult goal to get to zero. So we had to reduce, I think we reduced, Scott, if you correct me if I'm wrong, over $500,000 that was asked.
Yes, in terms of the amounts that the board did not recommend from requests, yes.
Right. So we had cut out an additional, $500,000. I know that there was a number floating out there. It was not a correct number that the town was looking to cut out only $300,000. That was not factual. That comment that came out, that was heard by a particular person, they only heard half the conversation. What had happened was, as you all know, the town department managers come before Scott, the town administrator, with their request. Scott cuts it down a little bit further, and then we cut it down a little bit further. And that person only heard what we had to cut. So they didn't hear all of the cuts that had been made. And you'll see it as you go line by line, department by department. There's been several cuts to different things. I do want to highlight a couple different things that Scott hasn't talked about. The budget does not include a merit pay for the department managers or the town administrator for the second year in a row. We unfortunately had to freeze their pay scale again. And I know that it's a difficult time in the economy. Some of us have lost jobs, some of us have lost homes in the town of Gilford, and we knew that had to be, it was a tough decision, but we had to do that. And again, the selectmen have once again agreed to forego their annual $2,500 stipends that have previously totaled more than $8,000 with the inclusion of payroll taxes and workers' compensation insurance. Again, we as a board did not feel that it was right for us to be cutting from all these departments and cutting Scott's raise or the department manager's raises without us being affected as well. So as a result, we decided to do that. Concerning again the health and social agencies, again, just remind you what we had discussed years ago at this board about letting the people vote for it. So again, we didn't include any of those outside agencies or social agencies in our budget. But again, I'm sure that they'll be going through a petition warrant article and allow the town of Gilford voters to vote on that. I did want to mention about the fact that, Scott spoke a little bit about Engine 4. It's a $450,000 expense to the taxpayers of Gilford, but I do want to remind everybody, this is we looked at this at first and we were like, wait a minute, a $450,000 piece of equipment is a lot, and I know Chief Carrier will be here to explain that more in detail. But after we looked at the situation, we felt that it was extremely important and necessary. And I use that word specifically necessary because we always say, is it a need or is it a want? But when it came to this particular piece of equipment, it's a 1988. It's old. It has failed a pump certification. God forbid it goes to somebody's house and it's not able to pump water. Loss of life. Loss of home or business. We just couldn't take that chance, and we support the fire department 100% with that. I also do want to mention about the fact that it was difficult for us to cut out certain positions, a position in many of these departments. It wasn't as if we wanted to do it, it was we had to do it to try to get down to that 0% growth. Into the budget, and again, it's very, very difficult. Scott mentioned it, and I underscore it. This will affect services. This will affect services, and we'll get by it. We've got great town employees and great department managers. We'll get through it, but it will cost. It will cost. Other than that, and again, like Scott said, we'll go through this line by line and you'll see it.
Skip? Yeah. Scott, DPW, you've eliminated the operations manager, and my question is, how many people total are in that department?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
This was Dustin's position, correct?
The one that was eliminated, yes. In the budget detail for the wage items, you can easily come up with a count. I just don't know it off the top of my head. I could give you the wrong number.
Okay.
Okay,
Just a couple general, are we supposed to be addressing the questions to Gus or to?
Either one is fine,
Scott?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Just a couple general questions. I know you went through everything with fine tooth comb, et cetera. And you mentioned some of the big cost hitters such as healthcare again, which is similarly year in, year out. One of the items that I was interested in finding out is with the change in the economy, just general revenue streams coming in, whether it be just something as simple as building permits or other things, what kind of impacts is that doing to the town?
Croc TV.